It's the 1998 Big Lots National Crown. Denny Adams, there is excitement in the air.
Well, there certainly is, and six-time National Crown winner Gene Houston setting on the pole, and this should be an awesome race.
No question about it. Doug Riddle, somewhat of a surprise winner last year, is in the field. Wouldn't he like to repeat?
Well, I'm sure he would, but Ronnie Phipps has something to say about it, too, as he starts alongside Houston, and we're green flag racing.
Gene Houston in the 6 car is the current points leader, although I don't believe this Big Lots National Crown is a points race, is it?
Yes, it is a points race. It's one of the big point races of the year.
All right, then.
And we see Houston the early leader, and it looks like Ronnie Phipps running second, and looks like the yell is going to come out, Mike, and the start of the race control has called it back, as we saw some cars have some problems here on the opening of this race.
All right, so we'll have to restart, and of course the figure 8 action here, always exciting, but the National Crown, an event that the figure 8 drivers point to every year, this really is the big enchilada, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. I mean, if you win the crown, I mean, the capper to your season, it's even bigger than winning the point championship in a lot of guys.
All righty. As you say, this event counts for the season long in points. Gene Houston.
We also have 2 other former winners, Joe Beaver, which will be driving the 2 car tonight in place of Rich Boyer. He's a 2-time winner, and Joe McKinney in the 19 car winning in 1991.
So we watch him come around.
We're about a half a lap away from going green flag racing. It's 50 non-stop green flag laps as we come down for the start of the Big Lots National Crown, and the green flag is out.
Ronnie Phipps alongside Gene Houston on your front row, and there those 2 come. Houston in the 9, Phipps in the 31.
And Houston already loops it through the grass here, and we see the 84 also looping it of Terry Malone. And it looks like we're going to try it again, Mike. Having a hard time getting this one started.
A tough break for Terry Malone. He's got a whole big cheering section here tonight. That's almost an annual thing with him, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Terry has a lot of fans out there, and we see his car able to get back in. We see Houston now rewinding, and so I didn't look like Houston got a little bit loose there on the start, so that really was a good thing that maybe Malone looped it too. If he'd have been by himself, we might have kept on racing, but
that's Malone.
We now see maybe a car heading to the pit, the 10 car of J.C. Cook. Looks like he has a flat tire on that car and is heading back to the pit.
You mentioned Terry Malone, of course, in the 84. Gene Houston, Ronnie Phipps, your front row to get the Big Lots National Crown underway. 3rd time that will start this event. I think we'll get it here. Look around, you can see in the stands, really an excellent crowd. Of course, a beautiful night here on a Saturday night, one of the special events of the 1998 season. Half a century of national crowns, and you know, that fact alone gives us some real perspective on this event.
Well, it's billed as the oldest continuous stock car race in the United States, and that's what it is, as we are just seconds away from green flag racing here in the National Crown, brought to us by Big Lots.
Gene Houston and Ronnie Phipps.
Looks like we have another lap yet to go, Mike, before we go racing, as we saw one of the other cars being pushed out by the wrecker.
50 times we'll have at it, and of course, much can and likely will happen. That's the 6 getting pushed
Dave
off.
Lawson.
Dave Lawson is no doubt very disappointed at this
Well, I'm
time.
sure he is. He's one of the street stock racers. That's one nice thing about street stocks, can run the figure 8 cars, and figure 8s can run street stocks, vice versa. And he was one of the guys that crossed over here this evening.
It really takes some experience, though, to have hopes to be effective here with the figure 8s, and especially in this event in particular. Now, it looks like we're going to get started, Denny.
I believe it is, and the Big Lots National Crown is underway, and we're cleanly around through 1, and Ronnie Phipps looks like he is taking the early lead in car number 31, with Houston running second.
Terry Malone in the 84 also hanging right there, but you're right. Ronnie Phipps is going to lead us through the early portion of this 50-lapper.
And Houston staying right with him as Houston has really been running strong this season. Gene's the current point leader. He's been to the victory circle, I believe, either 4 or 5 times this season. And Gene is having an excellent year.
The field's still close enough. No cars meeting up at the X in the crossover just yet. Still pretty early in the Big Lots National Crown.
Of course, you remember Gene has been in the news this week, too, as he was, his neighbor behind him built a fence and Gene couldn't get his race car out of the garage.
Really?
Yeah, Gene's been on the news this week as trying to get that taken care of.
A little bit of controversy, huh?
Yeah. They was wondering if Gene was even going to be able to get his car out to race.
Well, you know what they always say, Daddy, if everything went the way you always wanted it to, you wouldn't know how to react.
Right? That's true.
Big Lots, National Crown for the figure eights. Phipps and Houston, 1-2, and you had to figure, not just because they started up front, these are two of the best in the business here at Anderson Speedway. Great camera angle there as you see him slide up onto the banking there in turn 1.
Ronnie Phipps, of course, looking for his first National Crown victory. And Ronnie's been having a real strong season, also doing a nice job this year. He's one of the several Phipps that we have racing here, and sometimes gets a little bit confusing to keep them all straight. But we see Gene Houston now trying to go on the outside of Ronnie, but not getting the job done. And action in the crossover as we see a car looping through the crossover, but keep on racing.
Not sure who that was, Denny, as we stay under green, of course, for the Big Lots National Crown. Doug Riddle, by the way, in the 21, if we see him, we'll point it up in particular. He is the defending champion in this event.
And Terry Malone continuing to run third in the 84 car, as we see Ronnie Phipps now able to put a little bit of distance on Houston as we see some crossover action beginning to take place.
No question, things are starting to heat up. A few cars are already out of the event for a variety of reasons, and now we're going to see action at the intersection of the X here as the field has definitely spread out now.
And Mike Riddle Jr. In the 12 car playing a little tag there on the back of the pack with the leaders as they come down through the crossover. We see Riddle just clearing in front of leader Ronnie Phipps. Houston still continuing to pace behind him, and Terry Malone in the third place in the 84 car.
Phipps and Gene Houston. Denny, you've seen a lot of these over the years. How long really can Houston afford to follow before he is in a position to have to do something until we get pretty far along, right?
Well, with this being a 50-lap event, I would say all he has to do is stay with Ronnie Phipps like he is right now and let Ronnie continue to clear the path, continue to lead. One thing about being the leader here in a figure eight is that the leader has to really pace himself and watch the crossover clear, where the person behind him, which is Houston in this case, can get right on the bumper of Phipps and actually try to push Phipps into the crossover too soon and get him in trouble. So that's kind of one of the things that can happen as we see the 12 car of Mike Riddle Jr. having to pick a different hole on that lap.
So at this point in the race, Houston, although not leading, might be slightly in a better situation. Huh?
I would think he's right where he wants to be right now, and if he's going to, I'm not sure whether he's playing cat and mouse here with Ronnie Phipps or not. Gene's a competitor, and he likes to be a leader. And but I would guess that if he's going to do this type of racing by just following Ronnie Phipps, that maybe, let's say in the last 10 laps, he'll get serious.
Boy, he is all over him, certainly, as they come around. Pressure's on Phipps as he has to look both ways, as we say, when he crosses the X there at the intersection here on this figure eight racing here tonight. Floor cars, of course, do slow down to avoid trouble as Ronnie Phipps, Gene Houston, and Terry Malone. 1, 2, 3 in our field. The Big Lots National Crown. Action continues here as we tick away the laps.
Well, Terry Malone picking up this right in about the last 3 or 4 weeks, and J.C. Took actually was driving Terry's car earlier on, but as we saw, JC fell out early in that altercation early in the race.
The field,
that was the problem in the corner, Mike.
Yeah, there's a car up in the corner at the turn 4 of the quarter-mile oval here at Anderson. We'll see if we can't catch a number. A caution flag will come out, nevertheless, on this 50-lapper. Caution comes out, so the field will slow.
Looks like it's David Bronner in the 41 car. Maybe an engine or a radiator as he comes to a rest down in the corner. Tough break for David as he's been doing a nice job here this evening.
Race official comes over, checks on David Bronner. He pulls out of his car. He is fine, but obviously frustrated because his evening in the National Crown is history. Big Lots National Crown for 1998. We'll have more exciting action from Anderson Speedway. Back again at Anderson Speedway under caution through 16 of the 50 laps of the 1998 Big Lots National Crown for the figure eights. Denny Adams alongside. I'm Mike Miller. Pretty standard affair so far as Ronnie Phipps, Gene Houston, and Terry Malone starting 1, 2, 3 and remain in that position, Denny.
Yes, they've all been running real strong as we come back to green flag racing now, Mike, with Ronnie Phipps the leader, as you said, at the end of 16 laps. And I tell you, I don't recall seeing Ronnie Phipps run any stronger this season than he's running right now. And most of them really tune the car up extra special and get them ready to race for this race. $1,500 on the line to win this race tonight.
So an excellent payout, certainly, and the prestige that is winning the National Crown. A half a century of National Crowns have been held at Anderson Speedway, and certainly this great renewal of this event as Gene Houston looks to be very strong and comes up right behind. He looked outside, now looks inside a little bit on Ronnie Phipps, and Houston may be getting just a little bit antsy running second.
Well, that's true. As I said, Gene's quite a competitor, and I'm sure that he doesn't want to trail Ronnie forever. He wants to be the leader so he can set his own destiny. But right now, Phipps is making that car about 20 feet wide the way it looks as he's running just the perfect route.
Another guy, Denny, who's in a great position, really, Terry Malone. So often in this event to run third, although actually the 69, Ricky Tharp, you mentioned, is in fact running third now. 69, that is Ricky Tharp. To be in that third position as this event moves along can be very, shall we say, wise, because oftentimes those top two, I know last year the top two took themselves out late in the race.
Yes, sometimes they do. When the pressure gets on toward the end of the race, you'll see the top two lock together, and ends up just like Doug Riddle last year, coming home victorious from third place, and that can happen real easy in this race.
Ricky Tharp is third. It would appear as though Joe Beaver in the two is running fourth.
Yes, Joe's running that car tonight for the vacationing Rich Boyer, and he's doing a nice job for us. Rich has brought the two-car to victory last year as the point champion, so the two-car definitely a strong car also to contend with.
Pretty clean action so far tonight through the intersection there at the X, and as a result, Ronnie Phipps remains our race leader, and it hasn't been, there's some good action there, but the front pack here, Phipps and Houston, haven't really had close calls at all.
Well, and especially after we go yellow and, you get everybody bunched up again, it takes a little while for them to really get spread out again to where we start having some good crossover action. But Mike Riddle continuing to run on the back of the pack, and he's been causing a few anxious moments as he's been thinking holes that really weren't there till he got there.
How much closer can Gene Houston race with Ronnie Phipps? He is right on his tail. Occasionally we'll take a look on either side, starting to get the impression that Houston wants to lead. You can follow the action here as our cameras take you around here at the figure eight track here at Anderson Speedway. Big Lots National Crown, we're having at it with Ronnie Phipps and Gene Houston 1-2. It has been that way since the start.
And we we saw the crossover a little bit tighter that time for Ronnie Phipps as he came through, and now the cars slowing off pace a little bit because they knew that Gene Houston was also coming through, and Gene Houston is one of those drivers that just absolutely does not stop at the crossover.
$1,500 bucks, huh?
Yeah, 1,500 big ones on this race tonight, and better believe that not only just the prestige of winning the race, but a $1,500 payday is their biggest payday of the season, and it's a serious, serious race here tonight.
We watch him come around. Great different camera. Well, there's some great camera work right there. Has some close calls at the crossover.
Some of the slower cars getting off the pace. Now we see Jeremy Brunner in the yellow 7 car just squeaking through, and we're getting quite a bit of crisscross action now in the crossovers. We go split screen here for the fans, Mike.
With that on the lower side, lower part of the screen, you can see the leaders, yet still Ronnie Phipps and Gene Houston somewhat by themselves. Ricky Tharp, Joe Beaver running 3 and 4, with the broader picture showing action in the crossover. The leaders down on the bottom. So all over the track is where we are visually with you tonight. The Big Lots National Crown. Gene Houston now, maybe his biggest look so far, tries to go outside, now looks inside a little bit on Ronnie Phipps, and Houston still denied on the pass attempts here as we get to the midpoint.
Well, Ronnie Phipps keeping just about a length lead on Houston during most of this race, and Ricky Tharp also doing an excellent job in car number 69. As he's running third, I believe that's probably his best performance so far this season. As we see the crossover action continuing to look at that, just barely threading through that time. Man, oh man, that's why I said the hole isn't there till they get there.
That was sensational. And once again,
crossover action, Mike.
And you can see it for yourselves. That's the excitement of figure 8 racing. Look at that again as the cars crisscross there and get through cleanly. And that shows both the experience of these drivers and also the ability to still stay on the throttle and not back off all that often, frankly. Of course, up for grabs, the cash prize, the prestige, and that's why these two in that lower screen, Ronnie Phipps and Gene Houston, continue to battle.
Well, Houston and Phipps, as we say, battle for that prize money. It seems like it's right now the Ronnie Phipps, Gene Houston show, as they've kind of left the rest and put some distance on them. Ricky Tharp not too far back, as Houston once again trying to move on the inside of Ronnie Phipps, but Phipps just not giving Houston any room at all to try to make any kind of move.
How much experience, Denny, from what you've seen here at Anderson, does Phipps have as a race leader?
Well, as a race leader, not a whole lot, because he hasn't been in that position quite often. He races back on the pack, you know, like 5th, 6th, in that neighborhood. And but to lead the figure 8, and especially this race, I would say his experience is pretty nil.
Gene Houston, the points leader at this present time, and with his obvious experience in figure 8 racing, he's the kind of guy, if he could somehow secure the lead away, he would be a tough nut to crack, huh?
Well, Gene Houston, as I said, you know, once he gets into the lead, it becomes, you might say, an obsession, as if he's in the lead and he comes to the crossover and the crossover's crowded, Gene Houston will go through it.
And again, we see the action with the split screen. Leaders focused in on the lower screen, the smaller version, and then, of course, the wider angle view of the entire crossover here at Anderson Speedway. So you are missing nothing. You're seeing all the action as it occurs in the Big Lots National Crown. And look at the leaders have at it. It has been that way pretty much since the start.
He's really now trying to put the heat on Ronnie Phipps. We see Ronnie getting pulled in sideways. Right now, Houston bangs into him and loops it. Gene Houston loops it from second place after coming in contact with Ronnie Phipps, and that's really turning Ronnie Phipps loose.
Wow, bad news for Gene Houston as he was looking to make a pass on Ronnie Phipps and got the much.
Look at this, Gene Houston coming in contact with Joe McKinney again up in the corner, and Gene Houston now with problems on his car as it appears like the steering's messed up. And Ronnie Phipps basically by his lonesome right now. Now we see Houston ricochets off the wall, and he has come to a stop underneath Kenny Wright, and the yellow flag's going to come out, Mike, here in the figure eight.
All right, difficult to ascertain exactly why Houston is up there, though. He's still sitting up there, needs to get back into the flow with the other cars as we get a good camera look at car number 9.
You can see the steering is messed up on Gene Houston's car as the right front certainly is not correct on that car. And we see Gene Houston now, we're under yellow as Gene Houston limping his car maybe to the safety area. It looks like he's going to be out of it.
Race leader Ronnie Phipps leading yet still. He has led from the start as we are under caution. This is our second caution.
And Gene Houston, as we said, not only tangled with Phipps, but also with Joe McKinney. And now look at this. Look at this. Gene Houston drives right down and crashes into Joe McKinney.
We just saw it at the top of the screen there on the pictures. You can hear the crowd reaction, and things are heating up here at Anderson Speedway. Back again at Anderson Speedway under yellow conditions, still 8 laps remaining. Ronnie Phipps remains our race leader as we are set to go back to green. The National Crown, the Big Lots National Crown for the figure eights, 1998. And wow, some very heated action there that we just saw a little bit right before we went to the break. We will tell you certainly that Gene Houston and Joe McKinney are both out of the race.
Yes, we might technically call it that, out of the race, as the cars were not able to continue anyhow. But we see Ricky Tharp now running second here in the National Crown in car number 69, and the one of Rod Phipps now in the picture. So we have 2 Phipps in the top 3 positions.
How about Ronnie Phipps, Denny? How impressive to go flag to flag in this event. Pretty amazing.
Oh, that certainly would be very amazing. But as I said, Ronnie's running the strongest I've seen him run all year, and that car looks like it's very capable of going all the way now.
Houston was all over him for a long, long time through the course of the event. And obviously, it's not going to happen for Gene Houston as we watch Ronnie Phipps for what could well be one of the highlights of his racing career.
Absolutely will be if he brings this home here in the National Crown. We're also seeing the Ricky Tharp have his best finish here in the National Crown in the 69 car.
Gotta like the looks on Ronnie Phipps' car with the black and yellow with the flames, and it really looks pretty nasty, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's really a paint job from the old days, Mike. A lot of had flames on the car back in the old days, and I think you kind of picked that up from there.
It certainly is testament to the great history of this event. 50 years of the National Crown as we salute the history of this event and certainly watch Ronnie Phipps, what would appear at this point in time as a stroll to victory lane.
Yes, I didn't believe, it doesn't look like that anybody's going to seriously challenge Ronnie as we count down the laps now here toward the end of the race.
Denny Adams very close. Ronnie Phipps can sense the finish of this National Crown coming up.
Well, Ronnie Phipps certainly can, Mike, as he's coming around now to accept the white flag from Kenny Wright. One more lap before Ronnie Phipps chalks up the biggest race of his racing career here at the Anderson Speedway, as Ronnie Phipps only has a half a lap to go as he gets ready to come home for the victory here in the Big Lots National Crown. Ronnie Phipps will bring it home flag to flag to the checker.
There is the checkered flag and the excitement for Ronnie Phipps with this victory tonight. A dominant victory, but certainly some thrills throughout this 50-lap event of the 1998 Big Lots National Crown for the figure eights. Denny, great to call this race with you, and great to be out here at Anderson Speedway tonight, as always.
It's been fun for us, Mike, and we now see the car is coming to a stop, and we say good night from Anderson Speedway.